Peter Gardner, Managing Director of Wavepoint Ventures. Welcome to TechCrunch TV, Peter.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
You don't look very happy.
Oh, I am happy. It's nice to see you.
Why are VCs always so uncomfortable when they're on television?
I told you we're shy.
You're shy?
We are.
You're
Some
shy,
of us.
You're shy when it comes to writing checks, right?
No. We're not shy about that. No, I actually think that some VCs do a good job in publicizing themselves. We tend to prefer having our entrepreneurs speak in the front, and we sit in the back.
Well, Peter, I think you deserve the award for the Brave VC of the Week for appearing on a panel at FailCon, which seems to be a conference celebrating the idea of failure. Why would you come to such a thing?
Well, I think a few reasons. I mean, as a venture investor, particularly a seed investor like ourselves, we certainly have our fair amount of failure as well. And like entrepreneurs, we try to learn from it and improve from those experiences. But also, we have the unusual opportunity to see lots of companies and lots of entrepreneurs both succeed and fail. And to the extent that we can share some of the lessons learned from that view of the marketplace with entrepreneurs that are just getting going and improve their likelihood of success, I'm happy to do that.
Why do you think there's such an interest, almost a fashion, perhaps even a fetish, with the idea of failure now in Silicon Valley?
Well, I think it's one of our great assets, right? I mean, if you look at the culture of Silicon Valley from the very start, the willingness to fail, learn from failure, experiment, and iterate is part of what makes entrepreneurship great, part of what makes Silicon Valley tick. And I think that one of the nice things about the internet in particular is that it allows you to fail more cheaply. It allows you to experiment and get feedback more rapidly and iterate more rapidly. And so I think it deserves that kind of celebration, because great entrepreneurs that we work with are ones that are willing to fail, learn quickly. They try to fail cheaply so that they don't use a huge amount of capital going down the wrong path. But if you're not willing to fail, you're unlikely to succeed.
You must see failure very close up. When you see a promising entrepreneur failing, do you talk to your partners about how they're responding, how they're experiencing failure? Is it something you watch, notice?
It is, and I think it's part of our role as investors and board members to try to help the entrepreneur recognize when things are not going as they thought, to see problems early so that there's still time to respond to those issues before the company goes completely off the rails. And the issue of talking with our partners is really important. The partnership dynamic is in place within venture capital, so that you have to demonstrate to someone else besides yourself that a company is on track, that it's still building something of merit, that it deserves more capital. Sometimes as investors, we can get too close. And especially if you're involved in a company at a very early stage, it's hard to be dispassionate. And sometimes we need our partners to say, I know you care a lot about this company, but it's not working. Or you're not seeing a problem that's developing. Let's work together to try to solve it to avoid the company from failing.
Yeah, I'm intrigued when you use the word dispassionate, because of course there's nothing dispassionate about failure.
No.
And particularly in our culture where startup entrepreneurs are the new rock stars, they're the iconic figures in our culture, failure is even harder, even more traumatic.
It is traumatic, and it's traumatic for the entrepreneur. It's traumatic for investors. It's certainly traumatic for employees that have poured their sweat into a company. And when a company fails, it's painful. It's painful for everybody. But what we try to say to ourselves is, okay, what can we learn from it? And when entrepreneurs fail, one of the great things about our culture in the Valley is that it's not a black mark. We accept the fact that sometimes companies aren't going to work. It may have been the fault of the entrepreneur. It may have been some other factor, that the market's changed. I've seen great entrepreneurs with great ideas, great business models, really strong teams, and they get washed away with the bathwater. And
names? Can you name some?
no, I don't want to name some, but I've certainly had my fair share of those experiences. And if you were to ask me, would I back those entrepreneurs again, even though first time around their companies failed? And I would say in the vast majority of cases, absolutely.
I had Ron Conway on my show last year, and he said a couple of interesting things, I think, in terms of failure. Firstly, he said that he felt, and he's of course invested in Sean Parker and Mark Zuckerberg, many other of the most iconic figures in the Valley. He said he feels entrepreneurs are born rather than made. And if that's the case, is being born an entrepreneur, does that mean that you're born to be able to deal with failure?
I think it is, absolutely. And by the way, I tend to agree with Ron. I think that it requires an unusual set of personal attributes to be a great entrepreneur, and not a lot of people have them to be a great entrepreneur. Lots of people try.
Who's the greatest you've
well.
invested in?
Oh, I can't say that either, because I have sitting
Well,
on a whole bunch of boards.
Give me two or three. For our audience, we've got lots of people out there.
We have some great entrepreneurs in our current portfolio. And I've also invested in some folks who I thought were really great entrepreneurs, who on the surface looked so right, and when they got into tough situations, they did not have the capacity to deal with failure. Either they didn't listen early enough when people were sending strong signals that their original assumptions were wrong, or they were not effective enough fundraisers or salespeople to get through difficult spots in the growth of the company. Or they simply just threw in the towel when it turned out to be a lot harder than they had anticipated.
It's like being in battle, isn't it? You only
Yes,
really
it
get
is.
to see what someone's like when they're under fire.
Absolutely. We say that often that it's not until companies get into really tough situations that you see people's stripes. And incidentally, it's not just about the entrepreneur. We feel the same way about investors. As a seed stage investor, it's a rare case that a company we invest in is simply going to go gingerly down the road right to success. They will have challenges. And as investors, we need to strike the balance of being understanding of that process and supportive of that process, and being good counsel to the entrepreneurs as they try to work through that process. But also, to your point earlier, not simply putting good money after bad if it turns out that what we thought was a great idea is simply a solution that not enough folks really care about. And that's a hard balance for us.
Ron also said that he did some statistical analysis of his investments, and he found that he would very often invest in someone after one failure. But then I said to him, well, what about after two? And there was a kind of silence. There must be a point as a VC where if someone is a serial failure, you'll decide for whatever reason that they're not worth the bet. Is that fair?
Yes, it is fair. It is fair. And I think at a certain point, it becomes difficult to simply chalk it up to learning. It becomes difficult to chalk it up to market factors. And at a certain point, you say to yourself, well, that entrepreneur should have gotten to a point of experience where they were able to better predict the market, better predict the challenges to the business, adapt and succeed. And so I think certainly the failure is sort of just getting your stripes. It wears thin at a certain point.
Well, Peter, you've been generous enough, kind enough, brave enough to talk about failure. So let's have a couple of minutes on your successes at Wavepoint. What kind of investments are you making at the moment? Where are you most excited? And we've got thousands of entrepreneurs out there, startup people. What should they be approaching you? What areas are you most interested in seeing, ideas and plans?
So we're a seed fund, and we're typically investing in the first round of financing for companies, typically rounds of financing under $2 million. We focus in three areas: software, medical technology, and clean tech. We are very focused on capital efficiency. Our general view is we love being seed investors. It can be a very lucrative part of the venture food chain, but it is much more challenging to be a seed investor if you're pursuing models that require huge amounts of capital, because even if the company's successful, the seed investors are often not. We're doing a fair amount in the cloud at the moment. In medical devices, we think there are great opportunities there, and interestingly, the capital efficient theme that has historically applied mostly to software is increasingly now being applied to the medical world. Within clean tech, we tend to do a lot of energy efficiency, water technology, and interestingly, we're doing some work in ag tech right now, which we think is going to be an interesting market going forward.
Well, David Gardner, the general managing partner or managing director.
Peter Gardner, managing director.
Managing director of Wavepoint. Thank you so much for appearing on TechCrunch TV.
My pleasure. Nice to meet you.